Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, the General Assembly budget guru, Warren Deschanel, labels Hogan's budget as very dangerous. County Executive Leggett proposes tax increases to offset state spending cuts. The County School Board wants to replace Joshua Starr, or does it? And the County Council bans puppy sales at pet stores. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by consultant and former head of the Maryland Democratic Party, Rich Parsons, former Republican candidate for county executive and attorney, Jim Shalleck, Republican and education activist, Uncapher, and political strategist, Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Now that all the confetti has been swept up after the inauguration of the first Republican governor of Maryland in 8 years, the details of the initial Hogan budget are beginning to come into focus. Larry Hogan, who ran his campaign on a pledge to cut taxes and reduce state spending, has been true to his word, as his budget seeks to make permanent long-term budget reductions. According to the Department of Legislative Services, future spending on many programs would be untethered from their current formulas that require increases each year and would be capped. This plan requires approval of lawmakers, but it marks a different approach to budgeting in Maryland. Moreover, it's likely to be unpopular with key state Democrats who control the legislature and the many advocates who have fought to get automatic increases into law. The legislature's chief budget analyst, Warren Deschanel, told lawmakers there were flaws in Hogan's budget, and it's a very dangerous approach to budgeting. Rich Parsons, according to the Baltimore Sun, it's the automatic increases in funding that can't keep up with the revenue that had caused the budget deficits. So why keep repeating this cycle each year?
Well, Casey, that's exactly the question I've asked for many years. I don't think it's unreasonable to draw that conclusion. It is exactly these formulas, and if it's a novel approach to budgeting for Maryland to actually look at what the need is and then apply resources to that need, that seems pretty reasonable to me. I mean, everyone agrees we need good education in this state, and everyone knows these formulas are not sustainable. So I think they're just recognizing reality finally. The question is, why haven't they done it sooner?
Susan, isn't this just a shell game that legislators have been playing each year? Aren't they supposed to look at the needs, as Rich just pointed out, and vote on the needs rather than voting on whether or not there's a formula that meets the needs? Why not change the cycle now?
As we have discussed on this show many times, the maintenance of effort, which has a big effect on Montgomery County, is not so easy to change. And I don't think that we're going to suddenly change formulas. There are formulas that are good. For instance, aging populations. Aging, there are more and more people each year in this category. Education,
Susan, these formulas are just so the legislature doesn't have to do a hard
I
analysis
know. Well,
of what the conditions are.
It isn't going, I can't imagine that they're going to throw out everything in 1 year. I do think that it could have, Hogan's, says I'm going to do everything in a year. I think it's a little premature to change everything in 1 year, and I would have liked a more moderate approach.
Robin.
The thing is that the state voted for Hogan. I think that sends a certain message that not everybody wants to deal with.
A small part of the state.
The state voted for him. The man is the governor. In fact, I remember you asking me, Susan, if it was ever possible in our history, ever, for there to be another Republican governor in the state of Maryland. So we have one now.
Casey, this is a reasonable and prudent and thoughtful budget. He's only been governor 9 days. No matter what he did, he'd be criticized. It's prudent. It wasn't the sledgehammer that some people thought. Even some Democrats have said it was more reasonable than they thought. Give it a chance. He's making changes that are needed. Even the Washington Post said it was a
The bottom
reasonable
line
and,
is
and good budget.
We've got a deficit, and we have to stop ignoring the fact that a lot of these formulas are driving that deficit. You know, Mike Miller, who is one of the key Democrats this is going to have to go through to get passed into law, had comments pretty much to that effect, that this could have been a lot worse. It was less severe than he was expecting. And if state agencies, you know, have to deal with some cutbacks, you know what? Welcome to the times
some
we're
of the
living in.
cutbacks that come back is, well, tuition is probably going to be raised at the University of Maryland, which is the flag campus, and I don't know what's going to happen there. They're also cutting back on Medicaid funding. And Medicaid funding doesn't just include poor people, it includes people who are disabled and who are in nursing homes. That could be. They've also cut back on Medicaid reimbursement. Now, it's at the point now where very few doctors want to take Medicaid patients. And I think, you know, not every county has a mobile one like we do here. Cutting back on Medicaid funding is not a good thing.
Isn't the question really who should be making the decisions? Rather than having something locked in formulas, you have your General Assembly voting on where the money should be spent.
Casey,
No, it isn't the General Assembly. Remember, our governor in this state has the only one. He does the budget. They can't add, they can only take away. So the legislature doesn't have much input at all.
But this is always the way they do it. Let's take the most egregious case and let's cut the funding for that. Let's take libraries and we're going to cut the funding. But we're not just going to cut the funding, we're going to close them on Saturdays so that the most people possible feel the pain. And this is a typical example. Let's take a situation where people hear about it and say, oh my God, look what's happening, as opposed to other changes that could be made, and we all know it,
Casey,
which wouldn't be nearly as difficult.
As Robin said, there's consequences. Larry Hogan won the election. The people wanted him as governor, and he promised spending cuts and tax cuts, and that's what he's going to do. He's living up to his promise.
Susan. We got to cut this off. The final point is that there's not enough revenue coming into the state, and you have to have a realistic expectation of what that revenue is and what it's going to be able to support in your budget.
Well, we need to talk about how those revenue forecasts are made, and that would be an interesting topic for another show because it's like making sausage. It's not good.
But those revenue decisions have an impact locally, and so it's no surprise that the cuts in the state budget have an impact on the Maryland counties, and that poses a dilemma for County Executive Ike Leggett, who said recently that without help from the state and without the economy roaring back, at some point you have to face reality. And for Leggett, that reality is significant property taxes, because without a property tax increase, county departments would have to cut spending 6.1% to produce a balanced budget. Robin, what do you prefer? The cuts or more taxes?
What do you think? We cuts. First of all, we cannot sustain more taxes. We already have people deciding to go live in Arlington and McLean where the jobs are. We've driven out so many of the jobs. So now what are we going to do? We're going to raise the taxes on everybody here who's left, drive down our property values, and make it so fewer and fewer people want to live here. I mean, the thing about Ike Leggett is he thinks in 2008, when the economy here was basically booming, he was complaining and trying to put himself into the same situation as people in New York where things were horrendous. So, I mean, he complains about the economy, whether it's good or bad here. And the main problem is not that it's bad, it's that we're driving all of our businesses to Virginia.
Jim, what do you think the public reaction would be to higher property taxes?
Well, they should be furious. Around the state they were, and we got a Republican governor. Montgomery County, sometimes I think they're really not that concerned about taxes in this county, but they should be furious. This is a time for cutting back, less spending, less taxes. To increase taxes is bad message. Robin's 100% right. You're going to drive people out to other counties. Businesses are not going to want to come here, and it's just a bad message to send. Not now.
Well, Rich, even though Mr. Leggett may want to raise property taxes, to raise them beyond a certain level requires a unanimous vote by the county council. And what's the appetite for such an increase?
Democratic leaders need to be careful here and tread carefully on this issue. There was a clear mandate. There was one reason and one reason only that Larry Hogan won this election for governor. He promised to cut people's taxes, or at least stop them from being increased. I think if Democrats, I mean, that was a clear message from this campaign. There's no mistaking it. And that was like it or not, that was the conclusion of the majority of our voters. I think for Democratic leaders to immediately jump into, let's raise the property tax to cover the state shortfalls, and oh, by the way, let's do a whole new transit tax for this new transit authority, and that's going to be another, some people are saying another $1,000 per household in some areas of Montgomery County. We're immediately jumping into this messaging, reaction on the Democratic side of, oh, tax this, tax that. That is playing right into the hands of a Larry Hogan re-election strategy that I don't think the Democrats want to be, fomenting. Because I think voter backlash is a real possibility here if Democrats aren't smart about this. And frankly, we can cut a lot of things in this county budget. We can cut a lot of things in state budget that could be done without hurting the economy. And we've got to be focused on creating jobs, not raising taxes.
Susan, there's an imbalance in our county population where we have a very affluent number of people, but they're at the older end of the age spectrum, and they might decide They might decide to leave if their property taxes get too high. So what's the likelihood of a tax increase on property?
I do not feel that the will of the county council, from what I've heard at this point, is for a 9-0 vote. And just remember, getting 9 people in this county to agree on anything when it comes to the council, it never happens. I mean, even on benign things, someone will abstain or will be conveniently gone. So I don't think that's going to happen. But Ike is in a difficult situation with all of the state funding that's coming down, the need for schools, whether you like it or not. I mean, you complain all the time, Casey, about the learning cottages that we have throughout the county. There are
really.
Well, yes.
I think they're just fine.
Well,
I think we should have
more learning cottages.
Look, I think portable classrooms meet and satisfy a need, but that's really off topic.
No,
listen, that's ignoring the bigger issue, and I may sound like a broken record here because I've been talking about this for years. This county and this state have lacked for many years a real strategy for job growth. We have had negative job growth in this county for many years, ever since the recession. We have had a decline in personal income per capita in this county. These numbers are not moving in the right direction. Raising taxes is going to accelerate that trend, not arrest it. We need to be focused on the kind of transportation investment we need to build jobs and get people around so that we can keep and retain our employers here. And we need an aggressive strategy to make Maryland more competitive, not less. And Democrats ought to be on this message because we've got a lot of good potential there, and Ike Leggett, I think, is doing some good things on the transportation side.
If you can do two,
that's what we should be focusing on, not raising
and that's
taxes.
exactly what Ike is working on, an initiative now in terms of job growth, job development.
Thank you, Susan. When we come back from this short break, the county school board wants to replace Superintendent Joshua Starr, and the county council passes more trivial legislation with a ban of puppy sales at pet stores. Stay tuned. And welcome back. The future Montgomery County Public Schools Superintendent Joshua Starr appears in doubt as there is an impasse on the 8-member Montgomery County School Board whether to renew his contract. Susan, what has been wrong with Starr's performance that they don't want to extend his contract?
Well, we don't know, as they say, until the pleasantly plump woman sings. We don't know if his days are over. There is lots of rumors, and the Washington Post seems to have the inside story, they say. They don't have to make a decision until March. Starr had till February 1st to say he wants to stay. I think, from what I've heard and what I've read, basically it's a personality issue. I mean, when they talk about what they wanted from him, it appears to have. The graduation rate has come up, SAT scores have come down, the rate of disparity between minority and white grades, test scores are going down. I think it's personality. People love to hate Jerry Weiss because he was a power and he was out there, but it seems like maybe Joshua Starr is a little too milquetoast for them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Robin, what's your insight on this?
My insight on this is that no one at that level has been talking about the real issues in Montgomery County schools for a while. And because of that, I don't really care if he stays or goes. We have a serious heroin problem in our high schools. Nobody wants to talk about it. We have horrendous curriculum problems. If you pick up the textbooks, you can find mistakes in them, and there is no one to complain to. They've got lots and lots of problems with the schools, and because nobody wants to deal with the real problems and would rather kind of paper it over, I would take a superintendent from outside of the whole school system, the whole school infrastructure, like Michelle Rhee, for example, or the last superintendent in New York City, and bring them in to look at some different things.
Starr wasn't in the system. He came
From Connecticut.
Sure he is. He's another superintendent looking for another
I miss
job.
Jerry Wiest. He was a hard charger. He was a
Makes it
get things
difficult.
done kind of
but
guy.
he didn't fix all the problems.
Yeah,
No,
but
but he
you need a
made
hard
some
charger. He was
unpopular
a man of
decisions.
action, decisive. Sometimes he could be a little brusque. But this county, we're bigger than 6 states.
And the county
And
did
we need
a lot
we
to
need a
close the
leader.
achievement gap, and from what I see, the numbers there are still moving in the right direction. So I'm not sure,
Is that
exactly
because
what the
the
beef is.
parents are
It
doing
sounds
the
like
teaching? Because I'll
Well,
tell
I
you,
don't
when
know.
my kids were in school, that was the solution. Is the parents all did the teaching,
But isn't
and the
that
teachers
the
took
reality?
credit for it.
You feel that at every school? The parents have to help their
I don't mean have to help. If you look at
them
the,
teach their kids?
there's a good reason why you look at certain districts and you see so high, very high SAT averages in Montgomery County. And if you talk to the parents, you will discover that the kids come home not knowing the stuff, and the parents are up until 11 o'clock at night teaching the kids.
We have a unique district here. There are affluent neighborhoods and kids who have the best of everything. And then we have some neighborhoods in this county that are the poorest that there exists in the country. And it's a very difficult system to head. You aren't ever going to make
That's a
anybody
tough job.
happy.
You can't please any. In Montgomery County, we got over 1 million people, very active PTA. It's a very difficult,
It's a
almost an
big system.
impossible job. And
And very strong unions.
very
Get rid
strong
of the
unions.
teachers' unions, and we'd be
Very
way
strong.
ahead of the game.
Well, but it seems that Mr. Starr has done an okay job.
An okay job.
And-
And Mark
Problem is-
Elridge, I heard Mark Elridge speak the other day. He thinks that they've gone too far. He said, I'd give them a B. And I think a lot of people in the county
You know,
would
I
say,
gotta-
well,
I
give
gotta
them a
take-
solid B, but, I'm not certain what they're looking for.
At
Well,
the risk
I-
of agreeing with Mark Elridge, which is something I try not to do more often. But no, part of the problem, I think, is a clash of style and the fact that he's following after Jerry Wiest, who, like him or hate him, he was a larger-than-life personality and a real hard charger,
that's
as you said.
just what they
it's
didn't
kinda like,
want
I know.
when they hired him.
Right, but now they're kind of suffering maybe the buyer's,
Buyer's
remorse.
remorse.
You know,
Well,
they
I-
got
No,
what they asked
The other
for,
thing
and,
that
and
is playing a
there's too
factor
much
on
contrast.
here is that he did apply
we-
to be commissioner of education in New York, and that has irritated some people, saying he was only here 2 years, and obviously he's looking ahead. Is he going to be here 4 more years if we give him a
Well,
contract?
look, I've served on the board of 2 private schools, and I know that the replacement of a strong president is not an easy proposition.
No.
And I would assume that the replacement of a superintendent for a school system as wide and multi-dimensional as Montgomery County won't be either. The thought of going into the next year with an interim superintendent just spells disaster in my mind. All right, we're going to go on to our last topic, which is really the one has most people interest tonight. And this past week, the Montgomery County Council passed legislation sponsored by Council President George Leventhal to ban the sale of dogs and pets from pet stores unless the animal was obtained from an animal care facility or a nonprofit rescue organization. Rich Parsons, the purpose of the bill is to shut down and target puppy mills, but won't this harm legitimate breeders as well? And will it really do anything to shutting down puppy mills?
Well, the answer to your last question is no, because most of the puppy mills, I'm told, are out of state. So this really won't affect them. Not only are they outside the county's jurisdiction, most of the puppy mills that are causing these stories to be written are not even in Maryland. I think this is kind of legislating the wrong end of the spectrum. I think there is a problem with puppy mills, and I'm a big dog lover myself, and don't want to see horrible conditions like we've seen reported in the media. But I think the county council might be trying to legislate things that are really not under their control, like they often have a penchant of doing. And I think this is probably not a bad idea, but it probably won't do any good.
Jim Shalleck.
No, Rich is 100% right. This issue goes beyond the borders of Montgomery County. Most mills that I've heard are not in Maryland, and if they are, they're in rural parts of the state. So it's not something that the county council should be involved in.
No,
They should be involved in public safety and education.
I'll get to you in a second, Rob.
They should be involved in the big issues, not these nitpicking, feel-good issues.
Transportation system. Take care of the schools. I mean, there's much bigger fish to fry out there.
Now, Robin, I know that you are a proponent of the bill that the county council passed, but not every puppy or every kitten that has been sold from a pet store was ill or sick or maladjusted and had expensive medical bills for the people who bought them. Yes, there are horrible stories, but why is the county council focused on this issue? This is not something that they really should focus on, is it?
You know, actually, I think they should. It's funny because it's odd, but you know, if I have to look at the calorie count on a hamburger that I buy in Montgomery County, and I have to worry about the, you know, I mean, they regulate everything in Montgomery County. This seems to me to be actually good consumer protection. I don't want to buy. A lot of people will go by. They see an adorable puppy. They buy the puppy. The bills for that, the medical bills for that puppy are horrendous because of course you fall in love with the puppy.
Casey,
generality.
Casey, there is one puppy store in this county. This puppy store is in the city of Rockville. So for this legislation to mean anything, it is assumed that the Rockville store will go along with the legislation.
But
no,
is
there
there
puppies sold at PetSmart and Petco?
But they come in, they're not. But the thing is near where I grew up, there was a puppy farm that was exposed. And if there is any chance.
Who exposed it?
An inside worker
But
who
did the state of Minnesota take care of that?
The state of Minnesota
All right,
had
so let the state of Maryland,
Usually it's
the
the
state
humane
of
societies
the state
that
of
go
North
after
Carolina, the state of Virginia, the state of South Carolina, let the states take care
Well,
of this.
but with the
and
cuts
keep
in the
county
state
out
of
this.
Maryland, the state of Maryland isn't going to be able to enforce it, Casey.
It's the same way. Like, why are people selling drugs outside the United States and bringing drugs in here? Because, hello, we buy them. So people in Montgomery County shouldn't be buying
or cat that has been sold from a pet store.
Well, not
And
every
is it-
But you
hamburger
don't
you
know
eat.
where they come from.
Yeah, but is it
raw egg
true
you
that
eat has salmonella in it? That doesn't mean I want to
can't-
eat one.
You know, look, I love dogs, but I've bought dogs off the internet. I've bought dogs from people in their backyard. I don't know where the hell the dogs came from, but they were cute, so I bought them. This isn't going to change anything.
There's
This is ridiculous.
plenty of dogs
It's
to
going to
get.
make a difference.
There will be no
All right.
shortage of
All right,
dogs.
woof, woof, we got to go. Stay tuned for parting shots. And now with parting shots, Rich Parsons.
Well, there's some good news on the transportation front this week. After a pretty intensive lobbying effort by leaders in the business community here and others who were close to both sides in Annapolis, there is some funding for the Purple Line, which is one of the key questions we were asking of the incoming Hogan administration for Montgomery County to keep that project on track. However, the game's not over, and I just want to encourage people to stay on this one. There's going to be probably a 90-day review period where they'll make a final decision. But for right now, there's good news that the Purple Line's still on track. Our challenge, let's keep it that way.
Thank you, Rich. Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
With each election cycle, there are government bureaucrats who come and go, and I would just like to salute for a moment two Montgomery County department heads who are leaving, or one has already left, and that is Art Holmes. Art Holmes served in the county for a long time, has left the Department of Transportation. And coming up shortly, Art Wallenstein, the director of the Correction Center, is going to be leaving. Art Wallenstein has been a national leader in what he has done there, and both Arts will be missed. Good luck to you as you go on to the next quarter of your life.
Thank you, Susan. Robin Uncapher, your parting shot.
Well, on the way over here, I heard that Governor Romney had announced that he will not be running for president of the United States. And I think that's a good decision. I think that it will help the Republicans solidify how they feel about things. I think he certainly had his chance to run and to show the American people what his values were and where he wanted to go with it. And I wish him the best, but I think it was a good decision.
Thank you, Rod. Jim Shalleck, your parting shot.
Well, Casey, as you know, Susan's my favorite Democrat. And during the show, she touched my nerve again by bringing up learning cottages. They're not learning cottages. They're trailers. And we got 10,000 kids in trailers. They're unsafe. There's only one way in, no bathroom. Temperature control is often faulty. In today's world, we need a safe environment for our teachers and children. Why don't we get rid of the trailers in this county? They're a danger to our children. That should be a priority. Trailers must go.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, panel, for being here tonight. I will say as we wrap it up that this past week was the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp. I think we should all remember that evil didn't end with World War II, that evil still exists in our world, and we should never forget. We should be prepared to defend ourselves and our liberty. For 21 this week, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. You can watch us on Sunday morning at 12 o'clock and Sunday evening. Instead of the Super Bowl, that little thing that's going on, you can watch us at 7. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.